And there are a lot of people who watch this show who say, please don't give her a lighter sentence. And there are legal questions arising about if the court would they have to vacate her sentence, essentially resentence her? Can they do that? What sort of thing would she have to bring to the table to make any dent in her sentencing?
It has to be massive proof. I mean, she can't just go in there and say, oh, by the way, this happened. And Donna gave me money. That's not going to happen. She's got to have solid proof. Even if she was to vacate her sentence, she still has to go in front of the same judge to resentence. So why would that same judge now, after the proffer, give her anything different? He doesn't have to. It's his discretion. I would think there'd have to be video, written proof. I can't see her word isn't worth anything. We all know that.
Welcome to the global phenomenon, Surviving the Survivor, where we're all just trying to survive in a rough world.
What's up, STS Nation? Another amazing episode of Surviving the Survivor coming your way right now. Once again, though, she is becoming a diva. Good old Carm couldn't be here in person, but I've always got the cardboard cutout of Carm. She is right behind me here in spirit always, although I know she would have enjoyed this one. Carm is on the fine line when it comes to the law.
Do you want to help my son? His company, Content Partners Media, specializes in brand video and content creation for innovative companies and others. Please go to www.contentpartnersmedia.com and hire him. I repeat, please go to www.contentpartnersmedia.com.
So today we are joined by two beautiful women. Am I allowed to say that in the Me Too era? Probably not.
Yeah, it's fine.
Politically correct. Jacqueline Polverari, I hope I said that correct, Jacqueline, and Ashley Furst, F-U-R-S-T, not like first grade. Both of them have served time. Obviously, this is a very big moment in time in the Dan Markel murder case. Katie Magbanua is in Tallahassee, or was in Tallahassee, with a proposed proffer. Question is, will she flip on Charlie? Is she going to flip on the other Adelsons? It is a $64,000 question. No one knows the answer, but what we do know the answer to is what it is like for a woman or women, potentially Donna and potentially Wendi, to be in prison. And to help us answer those questions, Jacqueline, to you, could you just tell our audience, what were you incarcerated for? How long? And why?
I was incarcerated 2015 at Danbury Federal Prison for mortgage fraud. And when I came home, I founded Evolution Reentry Services. So I work with a lot of women who are going to prison, coming home from prison while they're in prison. That's how I met Ashley.
Wow. Ashley, to you, what were you in for? How much time did you serve?
Yeah, I was sentenced to 27 months on May 10th, 2019. And I was in Alderson Federal Prison Camp in West Virginia, which is ironically where Martha Stewart also was. And I was in for wire fraud. I'm actually on federal probation right now as we speak as well.
And just for clarification for our audience, those watching on YouTube who are not listening on Spotify, Apple, Audible, you are not in your prison jumpsuit right now.
It's literally a sweatshirt from Walmart. And I was like, oh, it's cute. It's navy and white stripes, but it's black on camera.
It's perfect. It's perfect.
It is absolutely perfect for today. And I actually appreciate you wearing it. It is hilarious. It's quite fitting. So, Jacqueline, back to you. I don't know how much of the detail you want to get into, but obviously you were committing some sort of mortgage fraud, which is no bueno. You get caught, you go to prison. Tell me your very first moment you step foot in there and you know you've got to spend over a year. What does that feel like? What is that moment like for you?
Surreal, because you're standing there and there's just chaos. People think it's very organized. You're going to go to prison and they're going to give you a room and they're going to give you a bed. And here I am with my hands around all of this bedding, standing there with women just walking everywhere and people just staring at me, no one helping. I know Katie has kids, and leaving your kids is the worst thing. And she's looking at life without parole. I was only looking at a year.
Yeah, we're talking, obviously, the reason we have you on is, again, this is a big moment in the Dan Markel murder saga with Katie Magbanua and her proffer. We don't know what is going to come of it, but potentially, even without this proffer, we've had a slew of attorneys on. John Singer is one that comes to mind, who is predicting that both Donna and Wendi will be indicted and convicted. Right now, they are unindicted co-conspirators, but could be charged, and he believes that they will be convicted of this crime. He doesn't know how long it's going to take for those wheels of justice to turn or not, but that obviously is going to upend both of their lives in a major way. And as you said, they're not going away for a short time if they do go away, but they're going away probably for the rest of their lives if they get convicted. And to your point, Wendi has two beautiful young children. Your particular situation, can you tell us how many kids you have and how difficult, and how did you say goodbye to them when you left?
I have three, two daughters and a son. And my daughters often talk. We've done a podcast together, so they, talk about how they felt. And that morning when I left, I felt like I was dying, and that was only a year that I was going away. And the only thing that you think of is it's the end of your life, because in reality, it is. I have a life sentence. I spent a year, but I am a felon for life. And there's nothing besides the president of the United States that could take that from me, give me a pardon. And I mean, you're looking at Donna Adelson. Was she 73 years old, 72 years old?
Yeah,
I remember women coming in at that age and frail and thinking, why? What is the point? 73. What is the point of this? Looking around, women detoxing. Ashley, I mean, you go to prison and there's no, let's put her in detox if she's an alcoholic no, they're detoxing right there in their beds. It is not a pretty place, no matter whether it's state prison or federal prison or even camp, what they call. I mean, I was there with Teresa Giudice and New Jersey Housewives and constant media. It was just a chaos, a shit show. That's what it really is.
Shout out to Jersey, where I'm from. Ashley, that moment where you step into prison, what was that like for you in that first instant?
Yeah, I would echo what Jackie was saying. It's really surreal. You're like, is this literally my life now for the next 27 months? And thankfully I had met Jackie before I self-surrendered. So I had met Jackie before that. So I knew a little bit of what to expect, but it still doesn't prepare you for the reality of going in, self-surrendering. You get strip searched, you put on these clothes that, who knows how many other people have worn. They don't fit. You're in shoes that don't fit. And I was given all these items, bedding, no pillow, by the way, just bedding, sheets and blankets. And I just get told to walk up the hill. And I'm like, okay, so I just walk up the hill. And thankfully there were women that kind of directed me where to go. But yeah, once you get in the unit, it is chaos, because it's almost like, I don't want to say fresh meat, because I think that's a little too extreme, but it's kind of like that. Everyone's like, oh, there's a new girl here. What's your crime? How long are you here for? Oh, you stole money? How much did you steal? All these questions are being thrown at you, and it's really overwhelming. And thankfully there were women in the unit I was in who were designated as mentors, basically. So they were able to help me, figure out which cube I was in, where I needed to go the next morning, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that that's something that gradually been implemented within the women themselves. It's not like the prison is like, hey, you are designated as this person to help people. It's just something that the women end up doing to help everyone get through the situation that we're in.
To both of you, Jacqueline first, is there also kind of a self-pity that goes on where you say to yourself, well, I committed this crime, but it wasn't that big a deal. I didn't really think I was doing anything wrong. And I can't believe now I've got to face the criminal justice system. So Jacqueline, to you.
Yeah, I think for me, there was no self-pity. I pled guilty immediately. I needed to face the piper, and I felt the only way I was going to get through it was to not have self-pity. I'm very transparent about my situation. I looked around, there's so many women that will just lay in bed and feel sorry for themselves. And look, I'm not the typical criminal justice advocate, because I do believe that there needs to be a system of punishment. However, the criminal justice system is pure punishment. There is no rehabilitation unless you go in yourself without self-pity. And that's how you're going to get rehabilitated. I think in this case with Catherine Magbanua, I think there's a lot of self-pity and a lot of blame. That's the whole proffer is proving of that.
And we're going to get to that as well. But Ashley, to you now, did you feel self-pity? Did you feel sorry for yourself? Like maybe what I did wasn't so bad?
No. I will say that my crime was definitely very hard for me to talk about at first because I was so ashamed, right? Like I knew better than to do what I had done. And so I would say I was more mad at myself. But like Jackie was saying, there are two types of people that go into prison. There are people that go in and they feel bad for themselves and they take advantage of the drugs that are in the prison and don't really do any work on themselves. Or you go in and you change your mindset. You do rehabilitate yourself. I am on the same page as Jackie. I don't think prison is rehabilitative unless you make it rehabilitative for yourself. Thanks to Jackie, though, because I think if I hadn't had that mindset, a lot of women going through this process, they don't know that there's groups out there that can help them. So I think if I hadn't had that opportunity to work with Jackie, I might not have understood that that's how I needed to approach prison. And I don't think I still would have gone in, even if I hadn't met Jackie, with self-pity. I knew what I did was wrong. I deserved to be punished to an extent, but I knew I had to go in there and confront things about myself that were not very flattering and figure out, okay, how am I going to come out and then change my mindset and rebuild my life? Because like Jackie said, we're stuck with a label for the rest of our life. There is legislation called clean slate legislation that is passed in a variety of states, and it has been introduced at the federal level several times, but that will never pass at this point. Yeah. So with the dysfunction that is Congress. So yeah, we are stuck with this label for the rest of our life.
Inside prison is a culture within itself. So you have our culture out here. And unless you've been to prison, you can't even possibly understand that there is a way of living inside prison. There's etiquette, there's manners, there is a hierarchy, very similar to the outside world. However, we have a saying, you cannot live with 1 foot in and 1 foot out. You have to be inside that culture or outside that culture, or you won't survive. So bringing both feet in, you now have to understand and learn, how am I surviving within this culture of women and diversity and possibly sometimes violence and a camaraderie and a bonding. It's a really eye-opening situation. And for people on the outside, I think there's a lot of people who will say, I don't feel sorry for them. I don't feel sorry for them. And not that I feel sorry for anyone inside prison. I think that there could be systems in place to build that culture into an educational system where the hierarchy now is helping new women come in, or else you're just on a merry-go-round and they're going in and out and in and out.
Well, you guys are a lot stronger than me. I'd be wailing like a little baby, crying. It's funny. I actually, I boxed to stay in shape, and my boxing trainer, who was world famous, he was number 4 heavyweight in the world. He served prison time, hard time. Oh, wow. And I always tell him if I went into prison, I'd be swatting imaginary flies, talking to myself. My boxing coach says when you get in there, they give you there's a whole, like you said, a hierarchy, and there's the white Aryan nation, the Mexicans, and they give you a list, 99 reasons why Jews are the worst. And I'm Jewish. So I'm like, oh my God, I would not do well. I would not do well at all. But back to the Dan Markel case. So this, Dan was murdered tragically in his driveway back in July of 2014. We're now coming up on 2023. So if you do the math, that's 9 years. I have to say, until they're proven guilty in a court of law, they are innocent. But a lot of people believe that the Adelsons, are responsible for this. Charlie Adelson, the former brother-in-law, is set to go on trial in the first part of 2023. But for 9 years, assuming that they were responsible, they have kind of looked behind, their back, over their shoulder, wondering when the justice system is coming for them. What kind of feeling must that be, Jacqueline?
Well, that happened to me. I mean, my crime was in 2009. I went to
Wow.
prison in 2015. It's sickening. And I remember the day the FBI knocked on my door, and I had a full on, if you saw the Key Mar-a-Lago raid, that was my house. The FBI raided me with about 15 agents at my house at 8:00 in the morning. And
Were your kids home at that time?
No, they actually did wait for them to go to school.
Okay.
So once they got on the school bus, I was in the shower when it happened. So I had somebody knocking at my bathroom door, and I'm yelling at I thought my son missed the bus. I'm yelling, I'm in the shower. And then all of a sudden there was FBI agents standing in front of my shower as I'm completely naked. I think after that first and terrifying, reaction, there was relief for me, because that sickening feeling, that you're sooner or later. I mean, the mortgage industry was falling apart. Every lawyer I knew, every closing attorney I knew, I was going to get caught. I overstated my income on my mortgage, misappropriated the funds. I knew it was coming down. Now I had this whole waiting game. Like you said, it was 2014. It's now 2022. I waited 6 years. I was on Ambien. I was on Klonopin. I was on, oh my God, the medical profession is no better than any drug dealer. They were just pumping the drugs into me to sleep and to function. And it was not easy for my children. I was miserable,
So Ashley, what was it like? What was the wait like for you after you knew you committed a crime to the time that you were caught for committing a crime?
Yeah, so mine was a little different than Jackie. So my crime occurred in Washington, D.C., and I live in Denver, Colorado. So, I went into work that day. I knew I had been caught. So I was just like being ready to be arrested, basically. And they actually did not arrest me that day. They just escorted me out, and I got on a plane home the next day. But I knew I was being investigated by the feds because the crime had occurred in DC. So it's a federal crime, basically. I lived in fear, I guess, that the FBI was going to knock on my door at 1 a.m, like guns a-blazing, and drag me and my now ex-husband outside with like the dogs, right? So thankfully that did not ever happen. And I ended up going back and having a meeting with my attorney and the prosecutor and the agents, where they were basically like, here's the evidence we have against you. Here's your plea deal. And I was like, I'll take it. Like, I wasn't going to go to trial. Like, there are things I could have argued. And there were like a lot of misunderstandings about why I did what I did. I had a really bad drug addiction. There's a lot of mental health issues that went untreated. But when you're dealing with the federal government, it's just sometimes better to just take it. And I was like, I don't want to draw this process out any longer than it's already going to be. So I got caught end of June 2018. I was sentenced in May of 2019, and then self-surrendered end of June 2019. So my process was fairly quick in that sense. The first night I spent in prison, Jackie was like, it'll be the best sleep you've had in the whole year. And it was literally the best sleep I had because I wasn't looking over my shoulder. Like, I wasn't like, oh my God, are they coming for me? But that being said, now that I'm back out again, I get that feeling every now and again. I'm like, God, am I doing something wrong? Like, I know I'm not doing anything wrong. I have a really good job. I have a nice apartment I live in. I have my car. Like, I have my life together, but I still can't like shake that feeling that I'm always doing something wrong and someone is always watching me. So there's that part of it too. But I also think the interesting part of just the whole legal system as a whole is how long it takes for everything. So, in crimes where, there's a victim and there's a murder, like, you're also making the victim's family just continue to relive it on a consistent basis. So that's a whole other discussion that could be had.
It's true. That's a horrible thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jacqueline, let me ask you, if you had guess or envision, what is a day like right now for Donna or Wendi Adelson?
If they honestly did do something wrong, they are waking up every morning sick with this sick, deep feeling in your stomach, hoping and praying. And I would think more so with Donna at her age, possibly thinking this isn't good. I'm not going to prison. I mean, I thought that up until the day I got sentenced. There's no way they're going to put, for Donna, there's no way they're going to put a 73-year-old in prison, and almost trying to convince yourself. And now there's children involved, and they're like Ashley said, the victims. What these poor victims, I run a family support group on Thursday nights via Zoom. And I started learning from these families as I'm running it is, oh my God, what did I do to my family? I did this to my family. Because being selfish, I went through the system, not even recognizing that my husband and my children and my parents who were 80 and my siblings were also going through it. My victim was Wells Fargo Bank, but they're still a victim. In any legal case, there's always a victim. And when it's dragged out, that feeling that they're going through, I think is what's more important than what I ever felt, because I did do something wrong and they did not.
And you bring up a really great point. I mean, there's always a victim. In your case, it was a banking institution. In this case, we're talking about an entire family, human beings, the Markel family, Ruth Markel, Phil Markel, Shelley Markel, the two children that were sadly dragged into this. When someone commits a crime as heinous as that, do you think they even are thinking about the Markels, or they're just, excuse the expression, trying to cover their own asses right now, the Adelsons, and are so self-involved, just hoping and praying that if they did commit this crime, they don't get caught?
For me, I can tell you, my husband's brother got murdered when he was 19. And it took a while for the state prison system. They caught who did it. What my husband and his family went through, they're the silent victims. They truly are. Although they have not had the perpetrator completely the crime against them, they are going through it worse than Dan. In this case, he died. So his family is going through it double because they want justice for him. I don't understand how this family, particular family, I mean, I know the gentleman that got caught that killed my brother-in-law, his family helped him cover it up. So no, they weren't thinking of the victims. I wasn't thinking of the victims when I committed my crime. I mean, Ash, you probably can say for yourself, but when you're committing a crime, if we were thinking of the victims, we wouldn't have committed the crime unless there's severe mental health.
Yeah, I just want to hop in real quick. So Ruth Markel, the mother of Dan, who was murdered, she wrote a book that's out now called The Unveiling, which is really remarkable. And in there, she writes, I often think that I've been sentenced for life, that Dan's murder is also my life sentence, a void-like landscape of traumatic flashbacks, anguish, and prolonged anxiety. So you can tell from that it's really taken a toll on her. And she also writes that she doesn't know if she's going to get justice in her lifetime. Ashley, that's something you don't want to die not knowing about, right, Ashley?
Yeah. And what's also particularly interesting for, when women are incarcerated and they've committed the crime, going back to the kids, women are generally the primary caregiver for kids. So you're taking the mother away, you're potentially taking another income away from the family. Maybe if the father isn't around, who watches the kids? Then maybe the grandmother. So it's just this ripple effect that keeps happening to anyone that's incarcerated. And the families really are the silent victims, because you take into consideration, okay, the mother's been taken away. Then you also have to think about, okay, well, my loved one needs money to survive in prison. So then the family, and you can work in prison, but I mean, when I was working in prison, I think I got paid 49 cents an hour. You can't live on that. And so
you had a management job, because I was only getting 30.
Yeah. I forget I think it was tiers or something. I was tier 1, but now mind you, I started working in the dining room, wiping tables. And I think I made $5 the first month I worked. So yeah, you need to buy toiletry items. You need to buy things, hygiene items. And so then the family is on the hook for that too, for sending money in. So your loved one can buy items on commissary, so they can make phone calls home, so they can send emails home, communication.
And to our viewers, I am going to get both Jacqueline and Ashley's take on Katie's proffer in a moment, but I'm purposely leaving it for the back half, so you guys stay tuned. But to you, Jacqueline, I believe you sent this to me, saying that currently women are being indicted at a higher rate than men, and it's climbing every day. Can you tell us about that? Why is that happening, and how problematic is that?
I think that a lot of it is that women are now in higher powered positions. They are now in more management roles. They have the opportunities that they did not have many, many years ago. And the legal system doesn't discriminate. We can't have the Me Too movement if we now say, well, women should be not indicted. Well, men should be. It's something that astonishes me every single day. And I have no idea, but I do know that with the women that I work with, especially the high profile cases that I work with, they have opportunities that were not in place many, many years ago. Women that are CEOs, CFOs, COOs, that Elizabeth Holmes, for an example, she had an opportunity, and what she did was horrific.
It's interesting sorry to interrupt, that you bring that up, because Elizabeth Holmes now infamously said, I'm too pretty to go to jail or to go to prison. And a lot of people speculate, and I want to underscore that Wendi would say something similar. She's a somewhat attractive woman. I'm going to get hate mail now. But she's not a bad looking woman. People believe that she's very self-involved, and have speculated that, she's looking in the mirror saying, hey, I'm too pretty to go to prison. But that is not the case for anyone. That is not a reason that you're not going to get the hammer of the justice system brought down before you, right?
Oh, absolutely. My husband said that to me. So he was in denial, and he'd say, you're not going to prison. I mean, you live in the suburbs. We have kids, there's no way. And a small part of me also thought that. They're going to put me in prison. What good is that going to do? We're talking not a violent crime. There's a big difference between violent and not violent crime. But I can absolutely also imagine Wendi sitting in front of the mirror stating something very similar. You think, oh, I'm going to win the jury over. Well, Elizabeth Holmes certainly did not win the jury over.
I don't know what Elizabeth Holmes is looking at. Not that she's, whatever. She just seems like a wackadoodle to me. But that's
she got 11 years, over 11 years.
That's hard time right there, right? What is considered hard time? Over how much time?
You know what? I tell everybody, and Ashley can agree with me, if you're doing 30 days in prison, it's too long. Hard time, I would say, would be in a maximum security prison versus a camp. But no matter how long you're in there, you're still a felon for life. So it's a life sentence. So you come home, you can't get a job, you can't get a housing. People, if you're single, forget about dating. I'll get hate mail now.
You're also, you're kind of wearing this scarlet letter. But aside from the difficulty of telling your children, and Ashley, I know, having to leave your pets behind, whatever the case might be, how embarrassing and difficult was it for your friends? You said you live in suburbia in Connecticut. So how traumatizing is that for all of them to know the lady down the street who we thought was this clean-cut woman, maybe like a Wendi Adelson, is now going to spend many years behind bars? How traumatizing was that for you?
For me, my neighbors shunned me. I lost a lot of my friends, rightfully so, but my neighbors treated me horribly. It has now been 10 years, and my next door neighbor, for the first time in 10 years, knocked on my door because my Uber Eats was on his, 5 years ago, he would have just let it go. My neighbors still treat me badly, and Ashley knows that. I mean, I know, Ash, you can talk a lot about that too.
At first they were like, why? Like, what? Why? And I, at the time I didn't know how to explain why. And I kind of joke about this a little bit, but I'm like, going to prison is the best way to find out who your friends are. like who was really support. And I'm like, I say that jokingly, but it's really kind of true because like I have a core group of friends around me now that I know will stick by my side if I need help, if I get in trouble. And yeah, my crime was very highly publicized in the industry that I worked in. I have a lot of friends that work in that industry still. So they felt like, I don't know if I can associate with her, like, because she did this. And, I think it's definitely still maybe something they struggle with now, even though it's been a few years, they've gotten a little better about it. But again, this whole process has taught me about who the type of people that I need to have in my life, and people that I have now are the people that support me and love me and care about me and want to see me be successful.
Let's switch gears here to the proffer because that's on everyone's mind. So Katie Magbanua, she was arrested in 2016, purported to be the intermediary between the hitmen who killed Dan Markel and the former ex-brother-in-law, Charlie Adelson, who is sitting in a jail in Tallahassee right now, waiting to go on trial for murder. So she's arrested in 2016. She was just convicted in May of 2022 to a life sentence. Why, Jacqueline, to you first, do you think she held out so long before coming forward now, allegedly with information that can implicate some of the Adelson family?
I think right in 2019, she got a mistrial.
Correct.
So she thought she was golden. Why implicate anybody? I'm golden. I'm not going to prison. It's done. And little did she know. I mean, to me, I think she's a moron. Taking a proffer now, maybe they will take off without parole. Who knows? But she's still going to do life. I cannot see them giving her a lot of time off her sentence for now cooperating. If you cooperate, I mean, look at the resources. She has now spent resources for 2 trials, not just one, but 2 trials. So now you're spending all this state resources on trying you again. And now all of a sudden, let me tell you, if I was the prosecutor, I'd be pissed. I wouldn't even work with her. I could imagine them doing a slight proffer, but anything to her is going to be great, right? I mean, she's looking at life without parole. So life with parole is a huge benefit to her now. She has nothing to lose.
And there are a lot of people who watch this show who say, please don't give her a lighter sentence. And there are legal questions arising about if the court can even, would they have to vacate her sentence, essentially resentence her? Can they do that? How much smaller or shorter a sentence could they give her? There are all kinds of legal issues. But what do you think, Jacqueline? What sort of thing would you have to bring to the table to make any dent in her sentencing?
It has to be massive proof. I mean, she can't just go in there and say, oh, by the way, this happened. And oh, Donna gave me money. That's not going to happen. She's got to have solid proof, because I do believe you're innocent until proven guilty in this country, although it doesn't always work out that way. And she's guilty, or she's been proven guilty by her peers. I agree with you. Even if she was to vacate her sentence, she still has to go in front of the same judge to resentence. So why would that same judge now, after the proffer, give her anything different? He doesn't have to. It's his discretion. I would think there'd have to be video, written proof. I can't see her word isn't worth anything. We all know that.
And there's also, as I understand it, in Florida law, there is a requirement. And again, I'm not a lawyer, but there is some sort of requirement for the state to also inform the Markel family about what it all involves. I don't think that they necessarily need to get the Markel's approval for this, but obviously they would have to run it by them. But Ashley, to you too. I mean, she's arrested in 2016. The crime is in 2014. It's now, we're on the doorstep of 2023. Why in the world do you think Katie Magbanua waited so long after 2 trials and ultimately a life sentence? Why wait so long to now say you have something and come forward?
Yeah, I think when someone is faced with the possibility of being in prison for the rest of their life, they will do anything that they can to try to change that outcome. But I definitely echo everything Jackie is saying about, if you're going to go through this whole process, like you need to have something good. Otherwise, you're just going to piss the court off. And if you waste their time, it's going to end up to be even worse for you in the long run. There's definitely a big difference in looking at life in prison without parole than life in prison with parole. So I would just echo everything that Jackie was saying.
I mean, like too, the prosecutor, that they want something on this case. It would not surprise me. Again, I'm not a lawyer either, but it would not surprise me if they were continually going into her and saying, hey, look, you give us something, and maybe we'll take without parole off the table. It doesn't mean they're going to. I also can't even imagine what they could do for her. And then talk about they'd have to relocate these other women to different prisons. How many women's prisons are there in Florida? They can't be in the same prison. What would that look like?
Yeah, we had two very prominent attorneys on the show just now. They both said, look, they believe that there's even a preponderance of evidence right now against Donna Adelson, possibly the father, Harvey Adelson. Do they even need Katie at this point? That was a question that came up. They might not, right, Jacqueline? They might not even need the information at this point, unless it's something that's the real wild card here appears to be Wendi Adelson. Unless it's something that could potentially implicate her, maybe they don't even need Katie, right, Jacqueline?
Oh, right. I mean, it's a similar situation. Ghislaine Maxwell, everybody wants her list. She has her time. She's in prison. She's going to do her time. They still want her list. They still want to indict everybody on that list. Who was on that island, right? It's the same type of situation. Even if she could give the prosecution a little bit more of a nudge. For parents, even at 73 years old, Donna's going to protect her. I would protect my children no matter what. And I don't know.
I asked my mother. She hesitated. You said no matter what. My mom.
I love your mother, by the way. She is. I love her. She's a hoot.
I do all the work. She gets all the praise. It's good. It's good. I'm happy for her. She deserves it. We're going to close out with this because I know the audience wants to hear this. So Ashley, assume Donna Adelson gets arrested, 73 years old, goes to a maximum security prison for women. What is a day like for her in that prison system? Walk us through a day for her.
Well, so the difference between, a higher maximum security prison and the places where Jackie and I were at is, you'll be in a cell. You will have a door that is only open when someone else opens it for you. They generally have the toilet and the shower in the cell, and you are stuck with whoever your cellmate is. You have to really not get along with someone for them to move you. And even then, sometimes they don't. So, she could be stuck with someone that she doesn't like in a room for 23 hours out of the day, but her movements will be very structured. She goes to chow at a certain time. She gets her laundry done in a certain time. If she has a work assignment, it's almost like Groundhog Day, honestly, in a sense. It's the same thing. And her days will probably be very long to that extent because it is so repetitive and so monotonous.
And would they put her in a cell with someone of similar age, or could she be in a cell with a 23-year-old with neck tattoos?
It could be whoever. They do not look at you on paper and then say, oh, okay, what open cells do we have? Like, will they get along? It does not matter. It's just wherever there is an open, there's no matchmaking in prison.
Okay.
Like, it's just whatever bed is open, that is where you get put. And you just have to either make the best of it or, yeah.
She comes from an affluent upbringing, and lived a very, very nice life in South Florida. Her husband is a prominent dentist. Her son is a prominent dentist. She drove fancy sports cars, had boats. Does it make it extra difficult when you kind of got like all the riches of life and now they're completely stripped away from you suddenly?
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, I was in prison with women who came from very similar lifestyles, and they get to prison. And I don't want to say they expect that same type of lifestyle in that sense, but you can tell they get irritated a little bit when, okay, the food's not going to be great, right? So you're not at a 5-star restaurant. And I don't want to say they take offense to things, but it's almost like they do take offense to things like, oh, this food is terrible. How could they feed it to us? Well, you're in prison. Like, so it is what it is.
It's your honey, you're in prison.
Learn how to be resourceful, right? Like, we would clean the floors of our cubes using a maxi pad because we didn't have mops, or the mops were disgusting, or you'll do your dishes with a maxi pad because that's your sponge. Like, it's just something that she's going to have to get used to. It's just the reality of her situation.
Man, I'm going to need Klonopin after this. Hearing all this, scaring the crap out of me.
What you can do with a maxi pad is shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing how innovative prisoners become. It's wild. But Jacqueline, to you, so Ashley talked about Donna. Now we've got Wendi, who's coming up on her mid to late 40s. Same deal. She's living in South Beach, as far as everyone knows, still kind of living the high life. Authorities come, they grab her. She's indicted. She's ultimately convicted. This is all hypothetical. She gets put away for life, goes to a maximum security prison. What is a day like for Wendi Adelson? There's no makeup in prison either, right?
Oh, there is.
Oh, there is. Okay. All right. We got
Wet
that.
and Wild 99-cent deal.
Yeah.
But-
It's not Mac. It's
Yeah.
not Mac or Estee Lauder. But so what's a day like? Walk us through from early morning to late at night for Wendi Adelson if she was to be convicted and imprisoned.
Well, I think the biggest thing too is handcuffs, 23 hours behind a cell, not seeing outside. There's no tanning booths in prison. So her tan won't be there, but it's much easier to never have money than to have had money and lose it. And I think that Donna will have almost an easier time than Wendi in prison. Donna's lived a lot of her life. She is older. I think Wendi is very entitled. She is very about me, and that will not work well for her in prison at all. The thing about maximum security is solitary confinement. Again, it does not discriminate. Women are thrown in solitary confinement often, and she could find herself, if she's not getting along, playing nice, she could end up in solitary confinement where you are 23 hours in a dark cell by yourself, food being pushed through a little hole in the door. Then there's health issues. I mean, at 40 something years old, you have reproductive issues. You have even for Donna, the healthcare inside prison is disastrous. You're not going to go to a cushy hospital. I don't find pleasure in talking about this at all because the kids is what I think of. I get emotional when I talk about kids because of my 3 kids and I know what they've gone through. These 3 children are the children that she has forever without a mom. In Connecticut, we had the Photos Dulos case, same type of thing. Now the dad committed suicide. The mom, they say he killed her. 5 children without their parents. That is the real injustice in this entire case, as far as I'm concerned, to end my note.
I also think it's important to note that, in prison, you are around people who are very street smart. A lot of them have grown up in an environment where that was required, right? So they see through fakeness, they will call you out on your bullshit, excuse my French, but they like to keep it real, right? Like they will put you in your place if you need to be put in place, because these women and men have been through a lot in their lives. And the kids, again, like Jackie's saying with the kids, it's particularly heartbreaking, especially because youth who have had a parent who's incarcerated have about an 85% chance to end up in the system themselves.
It's interesting. I grew up somewhat privileged, not overly privileged. Don't get mad, Carm. She gets mad when I say that, but I grew up well. But honestly, some of the, like this boxing trainer I have, shout out to Josh. When you've been through that, your perspective on life is so different. And these people, they do see the world totally different. They see through the bullshit. It could be a very, very, very long life potentially for Wendi if she's in there. And again, there's no pleasure in any of this because it's a lose-lose for everybody. But on that note, I want to give you guys each just an opportunity. Jacqueline first, if anything to say to the Markel family, knowing what they've been through and are going through right now.
Wow, I can't even, there are no words to say. There just are no words. I know what my husband goes through every day. Especially the gentleman that killed his brother is going to be let out soon. And now there's a whole other thing. There are just no words to ease any pain. There is no justice. These people can all go to prison. They can all be found guilty. They're not going to find any justice in their hearts. They're still missing Dan. That's just something that he cannot be brought back.
I would say the same thing. There's really nothing you can say. I'm sorry you're going through this is not appropriate. It's not a good situation all around. And ultimately, if justice is served, they still don't have their family member. He's still not around. So there's really no justice in the justice system if you think about it.
Well, listen, thank you both so much. I want to also give you an opportunity. Jacqueline, anything to plug, website, book, anything, business, anything you want to plug real quick to our global audience?
The global audience, if anyone is looking for help, we do have support groups Wednesdays for women who are justice impacted, Thursdays for family members. Go to www.evolution.com and we have everything that you can need. And we just are a wonderful community and you aren't alone. A lot of people think they're alone through this process and they truly are not alone.
And Ashley, anything on your end?
Yeah, I would say don't go it alone. If you are going through this right now, if you know a friend or a family member that is going through it or who knows someone is, do not go through it alone. You need help. And it's okay to ask for help to get through something.
And real quickly, as far as our podcast goes, please support us at Patreon. You go to Patreon, you put in Surviving the Survivor. Carm gets all the glory, all the accolades. I
was just going to say, I'm going to support Carm. Yeah, thank you, Carm, for having us.
It's a lot of work and we could definitely use some of the support, but thank you both so much for coming on. I don't know why. We had some male ex-cons and now female ex-cons. I wish you all the best. It scares the living crap out of me every time I hear about going to prison, but my palms are sweaty right now. But I'm glad you're both doing well. I know you'll stay out of trouble and have really fulfilling lives. Thank you so much. Love you, America.